This episode of the Better 2 podcast is brought to you by Kitty Mystic and M.Needom, author of My Days with the Dark Muse, as well as Love is Worth Waiting For. Hi, gang. Donna here. Thanks for tuning into the Better 2 podcast. Today's guest is Wajid Hassan. Wajid has a journey of a story. Wajid started out in Pakistan, where he was born, and at the age of 3, his parents moved him to England. And he resided in England for quite a while. But because they moved around quite a bit, he lost interest in school. And he looks back at whether he should have gone to college or not. But the conversation isn't just that simple. The conversation ends up talking about intuition. We talk about what his yogi has said and how his yogi predicted something for him before he ever thought about doing it. So stay tuned. Hello, Wajid. How are you doing today?
Hey, Donna, good to see you.
Good to see you. How are you doing?
Doing good. Bit of a heat wave here, but apart from that, it's counting my blessings.
Yeah, it's supposed to be, we've been in the 70s for the past couple of weeks, and we are officially, tomorrow, we're supposed to be at 96, and they're like, heat indice of 106 or 109. I'm like, that just doesn't sound like fun. Not at all. But you didn't come here to talk about the weather. So your original thing was that you didn't go to college. You had an offer to go to college, but you decided not to. And you often look back and reflect on that.
Yeah. Just for your listeners, I was originally born in Pakistan, and then my parents moved to England when I was 3. And I lived in the north of England. I went to school there till I was 10. Then my parents moved to London and went to high school in London. The original high school that I went to was in the East End of London, and that's where we lived. And then, they have a different grade system there in England than in America, but. At the age of 16, my parents moved to North London. And so what happened was I had to not only move, but I had to change schools. And, I was very happy at the high school I was in the East End of London. And then they moved to, it was actually an all-boys school. And then when they moved to North London, I went into this grammar school, and it was, I don't know, for some reason, I just, part of me just didn't like it. I kind of lost interest in education. I was having problems at home. My parents being immigrant. My parents being, immigrants, fearful immigrants. My dad was very strict, so I had issues with my dad. And so it got to the point where I was actually offered a place at college, actually a university in south of London, to study medical electronics. And based on, results of some of my exams. And then I just got disillusioned at home. I got disillusioned. And, at that time, when I look back, I should have had counseling. I should have had somebody, check me out mentally, find out what's going on, but I didn't get any of that. I was kind of left on my own. And it was really, really interesting because at that time, I kind of got interested in the organization that I belong to now. I got to meet my own spiritual yogi master, an Englishman by the name of Dr. George King. And at the spur of the moment, at 17, I decided to just quit school, quit home. I moved to Fulham, where the headquarters was located. I got a job as in a clerical position for a government office, and and that's how my life unfolded. Now, yeah, I've often kind of looked back and thought, well, what if I just continued my education? What if I went to college? What if I did that? But, I think just life just unfolds as is. And I look back at my life now and what I've accomplished, and my devotion to a spiritual cause of service and light and love. I'm not sure if it would have been any different, but I just look back at, well, if could have, should have, would have, probably would have saved me a lot of pain and anguish because of my maybe my pride or my dog-headedness, or just being a teen, rebellious teen. So I'm not quite sure, but it's something that I've always considered. What how it could have been different, but at the same time, it's really interesting because when I was in high school in the East End of London at the age of 15, I had an opportunity to get up in front of the school and do a speech, and everybody, because some of the wit that I put in, everybody just cracked up, and they just really laughed and they enjoyed. So it was a kind of a little stand-up routine. And my drama school teacher at that time, Frances McGee, she pleaded with me. She said, you're a natural. She said, you need to go to a comedy or acting school and do that. And I mentioned that to my parents, and they would have nothing to do with it. They said, no, you're not doing any of that science, and you're going to get a regular job. And so again, they were fearful. So I think maybe there was that delusion that I wanted to pursue certain aspects of my education, which was denied of me. And so I kind of, maybe that could have been a reason for losing interest. And it was only later on, at the age of 39, that I actually kind of got back into stand-up and comedy and acting. So there was a lot of factors behind that.
I think that, first I want to apologize about the warning. My phone is on mute, but we do have a tornado watch. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So fortunately, we're not under a warning, but that's why it went off. So I apologize. Secondly, I understand that the British schools, they have O levels instead of what we would normally call a high school, I believe, correct?
Yeah, they have O levels, and then they have A levels after O levels. Yeah.
But I get what you're saying, because in sixth grade, I went to it was a school from pre-K all the way through 12th grade. And it was a private school. And in sixth grade, I was doing seventh grade work. Well, the school they ran out of money, so they closed down. So I got put into a school in seventh grade with the same textbooks that I had in sixth grade. And I have to say, my mother's philosophy was, well, since you've already done this, you should ace everything. The problem is, and just like yourself, you become bored. And so, if I wanted something, if I wanted to go somewhere, I wanted to do something, she'd be like, well, you have to have good grades. Okay. So I could pull the good grades out like that, but I was bored. And once you get bored in school, you kind of start losing your way. And it's not that, I graduated high school and everything, and I finished, but it's just not, you find a way to navigate it. So yes, I passed everything, but I didn't get the full benefit of it because I was just trying to get through.
Go
ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree with you with the boredom. And then also, you establish friendships with people and the teachers, and then all that just suddenly, at 16 just went away.
Well, and like you, when I was 15, we moved from New Orleans to Shreveport. And that was like a 5-hour drive. And all my friends that I had at the all-girl high school were gone, and suddenly I am in a co-ed school. So very much like yourself, it's like now besides the school issue, you have to deal with the family issue. You have to deal with your friends. You have no friends, and coming in the middle of high school, people don't necessarily want to gravitate you. They already have their cliques.
Right, exactly. And it was very difficult. I mean, they were friendly, the kids were friendly, but it was very difficult to establish kind of friendships that you started off when you were 10 or 11, in high school there. Absolutely. And in England, they don't have a middle school. They just have a combination, middle school and high school, which they call secondary school. So kids start the middle school level at 10 and up till 17, 18 years old.
So, you were talking about the fact that maybe you would have taken the same path, but ultimately you still ended up doing what you're supposed to be doing. And the fact is, had you not been that rebellious teen, you wouldn't be who you are. I mean, you learned a lot, I'm sure, during that time period.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the thing when I'm reflecting back is I didn't have any goals. The only goal I had left, the only goal I had was to follow my own, spiritual master and his organization. And so I volunteered and worked for them on a voluntary basis. I didn't get paid, but, after work and stuff like that on the weekends and promoting their cause. And so I guess I did have a goal. It just wasn't on the educational variety, but I kind of did menial work on and off, and then eventually, at the age of 24, I ended up home, broke, and homeless, and so it was very interesting that I kind of went full circle, and it was my family that supported me and helped me get into a government funded program where I again started studying electronics and eventually got into computer maintenance and became a field service engineer. And and again, I think it was more out of necessity than desire, because ultimately, I think today where I'm at now is where I probably wanted to be initially, but like I said, I eventually got to when I moved to LA, and I got out of the technical field. I did eventually get into comedy and acting, and did pretty good as a union actor in LA for 20 years. So that's. I think you brought up a good question there, Donna. Is like, is it sometimes that our life is destined, or are we, based on the information I received from my yoga master, is that it's been said that before you. I mean, I'm a strong believer in reincarnation, but it's been said that that before you're born, your higher self
lays it all out.
Yeah, your parents, your environment, everything, and those experiences are needed in order for you to evolve or grow, or basically to evolve. And so, and sometimes some of the kind of more challenging, painful experiences are the ones that actually mold you into becoming a better person. So was it fate or was it destiny? I don't know, but I do remember my yoga master when I was in Los Angeles 7 years before I got into comedy and acting. He saw me on my first commercial.
Nice.
And I didn't even know at that time that I was going to be in that profession. So, that's something to ponder is our life kind of predetermined, and do we follow that based on the guidance from our higher power, or do we revert to other things and have to come back and learn those lessons again? So, yeah, I think you definitely brought up a good point.
Well, I mean, the first time I was told that, I was just kind of like, and I picked my parents, come on. Because, it's like you think, well, I could have picked something so much better, but you don't look at it. I mean, when you're young and you hear this, as an older person, you're like, well, I get it, because I needed those challenges. I needed to go through that so I could understand. I have a friend who, she's like, all the stuff you've been through in your life. And I'm like, yeah, but it allows me to do what I do, talking to people, because I have had all these diverse experiences. I have done all these wild things, and not always good things. And, or, been in a situation where, one of my best friends was murdered. And it's like, those things kind of form you, because they take you out of your normal suburban comfort zone. So it's like, you have to go through these things to, as you said, understand yourself, grow, evolve, learn compassion and empathy. Because if we always sat in our nice little cushy world and didn't have all these things, we wouldn't be well-rounded. And it's funny, because they always say you have to go to college to become well-rounded. And that's not really true, because life is a great teacher. It's a great teacher.
Yeah, and then, you have to question the educational system of the world. You learn like a parrot, which you don't need any of that stuff, and they don't teach, what is ahead of you in life, and they don't really teach the principles of life. I firmly believe they need to teach things like karma and spiritual laws, and as you sow, so shall you reap, and responsibilities and stuff like that. But the educational system probably needs to be revamped as well. And you're right, people who have had sheltered lives, they go to college, they have a job, they get married, they have kids, and they retire. That's wonderful, and good for them. But people like you and me, who've been through the ringer, not once but quite a few times, there's more wisdom. There's more and there's more understanding and empathy for others who've been there as well. So that's I guess that's a good thing, because I don't think that karma punishes, or there's a punishing God, but there are very, very painful lessons, teachings in life that either we learn from them or we repeat them over and over again and still keep those same painful experiences.
Well, I was told by a reader, because my mother killed herself, and I was told by a reader that
Wow.
My mom has done this in many lifetimes, that she always finds a way to have somebody assist her in taking herself out. And in this case, my stepfather had a gun, and there you go. So, it's always something that she has done. And that's the thing. We keep repeating these lessons. And sometimes we do reincarnate with other people that we've had lives with. And that's, people are like, well, how does that work? And it's like, I had a neuroscientist on the program, and we actually talked about the metaphysical and how we are all connected, and nobody really talks about that.
Right.
And I dumb it down a lot, because it's like, well, look at Star Wars. Look at the original Star Wars movies and the Force. Really, that's the same thing. We're all connected. We are all bound together. And especially if you're empathic, if you start feeling what's going on in the world and it's dark, you're going to pick up on it. And it starts weighing you down. And there's, how do you explain it? It's just, it is what it is. It's life. It's the universe. It's the unknown.
Well, I strongly believe that these are definitely times of change, and pressures are being put forward astrologically and in other ways for man to realize that, yes, like you mentioned, the oneness, that we're not only interconnected together, we're also interconnected with the birds and the rocks and the trees and the planet and the cosmos. They did a study recently of the brain, and they did really close up images of the brain, and a lot of the synapse and the connections of the neurons, the trillions and trillions, look just like the universe.
Yeah.
Pictures of the universe, just so that's like this war right now that's going on, with Russia and Ukraine. It's just so futile,
mm-hmm.
because they people are so obsessed with race and being belonging to this religion or this country, and it's all total BS, because that's another thing that my yogi master and the context that he had are pushing right now, is that the law of reincarnation, which actually was very interesting, that Christian scholars are coming forward right now saying that 700 years ago, reincarnation was actually taught in the Christian religion. It was deliberately taken out in order to put that one life to live business, so that, they could control the masses. So all these truths are being coming out right now. I think if people, were told the truth about reincarnation, first of all, the wars would diminish rapidly, because people would know that, yes, they've been a Jew and a Palestinian, or they've been a Muslim and a Christian. And so all these experiences are needed to belong to different races, belong to different religions, even different sexes, in order to learn the lessons that we need to learn on this planet, which is a beautiful classroom. Didn't come here to suffer, but to learn these lessons and evolve, and then eventually move on to the cosmos. And so, we're so backward. We're such a savage, warlike race. Our savagery is there's the people that contacted my yogi master, people from different spheres, different planets. We're known in the solar system and beyond as a very barbaric race. And so, but the good thing is, because of pressures that are being put forward right now, I do definitely believe there is an awakening, a kind of a spiritual awakening, not a religious awakening, because religions have caused more deaths than non-religious people. But there is a universal awakening, and people are awakening, and it's up to people today to listen to that in a small voice, or their intuition. But unfortunately, at this time, it may get worse before it gets better.
It always plays out that way. It's always darkest before the dawn, they say. And, there's that meme that goes around where there's the little spaceship with the aliens, and they're like, lock the doors, we're passing Earth now. That's the thing. And how wrong are we to think that we are so super intelligent that there's nobody else out in space? Really?
Well, it's deliberately has been brainwashed. The media and those that control the media. They deliberately, on the whole, there's mass hypnotization through the media, and people are not allowed to think for themselves. And so a lot of people are thinking outside of the media right now. And so all these things about being alone or no life on other planets, it's laughable, especially with science advancing now, and just looking at our own galaxy. It's just laughable now to think that, with you, and again, I question the intelligence aspect of our civilization.
Well, it goes back to the comedian George Carlin. I think it was him that said about dumbing down of America. When we decide, this is what's really sad is, we teach history, and I was an American history honor student. We teach history, but we teach history very whitewashed. We teach it because we won. So we don't teach you everything that we keep hidden. It's like every family has some dark secret in their closet, and America's got a bunch. And I'm not knocking America, folks, so don't come at me. But if you really look at us, we've done some really horrific things, barbaric things. And, we should own that. If we want to sit there and say we are proud Americans, well, we have done some really bad things. And every country on this planet, except for maybe a couple, have. And it's been in the name of my country. It's been in the name of religion. And the sad thing is, they send other people to fight their battles. Innocent people. And what does that get them? Power? But power is fleeting. So is money.
Yeah, I strongly believe that there are forces of good and there are forces of evil, And I definitely believe that there's an invisible war that's going on behind the scenes. And again, you'd have to be psychic or aware of different realms of existence. But there are forces of darkness that want to keep control of the masses through through this illusion of materialism. And there are forces of light that, and if you look back at our real history, we've had civilizations that were more advanced than we were at one time, and falling under wars and destruction. So again, for us, again, on a collective, we just have to keep learning through painful experiences. Like what's happening right now with the prices of gas going up, and all these are deliberate moves. It's got nothing even to do with the war. And people are so hypnotized. There's nobody like en masse going, this is ridiculous. We're being manipulated. The gas, the corporations, their profits have increased 300%, and nobody's talking about that. So in a way, yeah, we're definitely being deluded. We are being controlled, but I think that's also that control and is going to be eventually broken, because I think not only is there a spiritual awakening, I think the planet on herself is also raising her vibrations. I believe she's a living, breathing goddess, and so she's raising her vibrations. So these are definitely times of change, but very difficult times as well.
Well, and right now the U.S. is under Pluto's return. We're under Pluto return, and that bodes that truths are going to be told about our country, our government. We're going to, dare I say, the blinders are going to come off because, and here's the thing, will our democracy survive? That's the big thing. Will our democracy survive? Because as you were saying about the media, it's like we've created these 24-hour news stations that will give you exactly whatever side you want to hear. It may not be the truth, but we're going to give you the propaganda, and you're going to believe it, because just like Jim Jones with his Kool-Aid, you're certainly going to drink it down and swallow it up and go, yay team. And it may not even be true, but you're wanting to follow it because it's comfortable for you. And it fits your narrative.
Well, the divide and conquer through fear and intimidation is working very, very well. And these are tools that the communists used, the Nazis used, the fascists used, and they're well-known tools. And it's being used right now in the West as well. So, the question is, how do we break this? And there's only one solution, and that's a spiritual solution, not a religious solution. And everything's been tried and nothing's worked. And, we talk about pollution, material pollution. I think also people need to be aware that thoughts are real, energy is real. We're spiritual beings in physical bodies. We have auras, we have psychic senses. None of these have been, we're in very early times in regards to, the real person that we are, except the physical aspect is just the minor aspect of it. And so, there's a mental pollution around the planet as well that needs to be transmuted. And so the only solution is to send out spiritual power, prana, or spiritual healing, the energy of love, which is very, very tangible. It's radiated from the sun, the energies of the cosmos. And so that's one thing that we haven't tried yet en masse, is to send out spiritual power, regardless of race, color, creed, or religion, but just on a universal level. And that's the main message that I'm pushing right now with my book and a lot of interviews that I've been coming. And I'm still getting blank looks from people because they don't understand that concept. But eventually, that's I think it's the only solution that's going to fix us. And also, people need to understand that it's very easy to condemn and blame another race, blame another religion, blame another country, but nobody's willing to take responsibility for themselves. And so, my yogi master, Dr. King, he wrote a book in the 50s called "You Are Responsible," so we have to take responsibility for our own actions. And you're right. We can't blame other countries. Each country has to look at their own selves, has to look at the part that they play in order that has created this madness and chaos around the planet. And until that's done, nothing is really going to make a difference. Politicians have never created any lasting peace, nor the corporations. We worship billionaires. We worship
queens.
And we worship, actors and actresses that, that have their own personal issues, and we look at them as demigods. But we really haven't looked at the real leaders of the world, the real teachers that came, people like, Jesus and Buddha and Patanjali and Krishna. I mean, all these great masters that came that taught us exactly the same thing, but just two different civilizations, different cultures. But, we need to return back to those spiritual laws that they said. What part of thou shalt not kill don't people understand, just basic spiritual laws.
So it's a very true statement. And I mean, I have some pagan friends and they will talk about the fact that Christianity took things from the pagans. I mean, and that's religion. I often look at the Bible, and I'm not going to knock it, but I look at the Bible and people will say, well, the Bible is the Bible. Well, is it? Because how many times has it been written? How many times has it been rewritten? How many books have been removed? How many translations are there of the Bible?
Talking about pagan,
mm-hmm.
Did you know that December 25th is not the actual birthday of Jesus?
Yes.
It's actually March the 15th, but they aligned it with a pagan festival
mm-hmm.
to appease people. So yeah,
the festival of Yule.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And I mean that's the thing. It's like, and not to get in a race conversation, but if you take that story, the creation story, which also Isis has a creation story, as we know, the goddess Isis. So, of course, that has been taken, that name, which, we've taken that name and corrupted that name with giving it a terrorist organization. But the fact of the matter is, if you take where Jesus was born, Jesus would not look like the Americanized version of Jesus. But you better not tell anybody that, because you're going to get blasted for it. Jesus most likely will look more like a gentleman of your stature.
Yeah, and people are even questioning the Star of Bethlehem. How can a star hover over a stable and lead the wise men? They're questioning that as well. So there's a lot of questions that people are asking now that religion has not answered, or Orthodox religion hasn't answered.
Now, the star, we can get into a metaphysical conversation and say, maybe like the pyramids, how did the pyramids build? Maybe there was some kind of magnetic pull. Maybe Bethlehem, maybe it was actually a pyramid and not a stable. We could play with the what if philosophical game here about the different ways of what it could be. But going back to what we were talking about as far as sending love, another problem we have is social media wants everybody to be famous for 15 minutes with the whole Andy Warhol school, which is fine and dandy, but we're getting distracted by that and we're not willing to do the work. We're so ingratiated by how many hits we get for TikTok or Instagram that we're not focusing on how do we make this place a better place. Granted, some people are going to hear your message more, but are you really getting a message out, or are they just scrolling through?
Well, the message means that you actually have to physically perform this ritual. In other words, you raise your hands and you invoke this power and you send it out. It's a physical action. It's a ritual. And there are weapons of mass distraction right now with social media. I mean, kids, are on video games for like 8, 9, 10 hours a day. They're looking at TikTok, short 30-second, videos continuously. And so again, that's another form of hypnotization or addiction that's occurring right now. And a lot of the young people are doing that because they it's their way of detaching from what's going on in the world. So you can't really blame the young kids for that. You can blame the parents, and you can blame, this especially special way of enticing people to be in this kind of hypnotic zombie-like state. I mean, instead of looking down on your iPhone at the gloom and doom or hypnotized videos, just put your iPhone down and go out and put it away for a couple of hours and go sit in nature, go to the beach, go to the mountains, and look up to the skies and look for inspiration. I mean, the closest I ever got to a divine source was in 2006 when I went to Africa. I did a safari in Kenya, and then I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and it was just beautiful, being on top of a mountain without any noise of planes, trains, no media, no nothing. And I felt so close to my own higher power than I've ever done. And so young kids these days are going through a tremendous amount of anxiety and fear and depression. And so, so they need to be guided and, told to, again, go back to what we're supposed to be doing, the spiritual beings, is to start channeling this energy, this universal energy, and sending it out. And it's a message which is falling right now on deaf ears, but eventually, as things get worse, people will have to realize that's the only solution that's going to fix it, and that realization that we are one, and and this ridiculous national pride of being proud to be born in this religion, or this religion is better. It's all hogwash. A very wise master once said, he said, there's only one sin on this planet, and that's ignorance. And so, if we transmute ignorance, it becomes enlightenment. So the enlightened man knows what's going on. And because we don't know what's going on, we're fed information that makes us hate and be jealous and have apathy. And so we have to, the only way to dispel ignorance is for people to be educated in the reality of life, and not this Maya or this illusion that's occurring right now.
When my husband passed, because we were talking about the media, when my husband passed, I stepped away from watching the news. I get my news occasionally online, so I know what's going on in the world, but I don't sit there and dive deep into it because, firstly, there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do to control it. There's nothing that's going to make it better. And is it better for me to live in fear and worry about things I can't control and get more into, I lost somebody. So I already had that going. Why would I die? Why would I continue to pound on? And before he died, because he died in 2020, he knew he was dying, but COVID happened, and he would watch the news, and he would sit at the dinner table, and he would cry. And I'm like, we really shouldn't be watching this. And he's like, no, I want to know what's going on. And I'm thinking, this is not healthy. You're dealing with the end of life issues yourself, and now you're watching the body count. And I would usually say, okay, I'm done with dinner. I'm going upstairs now, because I couldn't. I knew I was going to lose him, and he's still watching this crying. And it's not that I wasn't empathetic for him, because I was, but why put yourself through that pain and torture? Because you can't change it. And I know that sounds really bad to me. I'm sure some people are going to be like, well, but the thing is, don't judge me. That's what I do to protect me. It's something I can't control. And it's not that I'm not watching and knowing what's going on in the world. It's just there's a certain amount of media that is going to be spun a certain way that I don't really need to listen to their agenda.
And it's constant. And like you say, it's 24 hours, it's constant, and it's especially designed because, you feed the subconscious enough times and the subconscious starts believing that. And so it's definitely designed to create the fear and anxiety. And of course, they're master manipulators, and they'll show babies and mothers and stuff like that. And so they know how to play they know how to play the game. But, we have to stay in our own little hula hoop of the reality of what we can and cannot do. I still believe that we can make a change for the world if we do. I mean, there's 3 ways of being of service. I volunteer, and I do a lot of volunteer work. I give to charity, and then the third one is, I can't be a doctor in the war field, but I can send out power, this tangible spiritual energy out, and I can make a difference to the world. It may not be registered. I'm not gonna save the world tomorrow, but on a collective, if all we did, if we did 5 minutes, I'm not even, they're not even asking us to do hours and hours of sending out power. But on a collective, what would happen if a couple of million people raise their hands every day for 5 minutes and send out power? It would transmute the world within 25 to 50 years. And so, that's what's been asked. And hopefully mankind will open up eventually to that realization that of this oneness. But till that goes on, yeah, you're right. Things are probably going to get worse before they get.
And I mean, I don't disagree, and I hope I didn't come across. I do know that we can make change. I'm not saying we can't, but it's like there's just certain things that
you can only do.
Right.
Yeah, there's only some. Yeah, and there's only certain things that you can take. I can't take. I wake up in fear and anxiety and depression. Because like you and your husband and other people, was sensitive, spiritual people, and we pick up on that stuff. We pick up on the vibration of the world. We have to, we're all interconnected. Whether we watch the news or not, right, we're still connected. So we have to protect ourselves. And one way of protecting ourselves is to, there was one spiritual practice which I will let your listeners into, which is a good protective practice these days to protect yourself from psychic and mental influences that are just occurring around the planet. And that's the practice of the violet flame that was used in Atlantean times. And what people can do in these days is they can just visualize this violet flame coming up from the planet, the goddess Earth, and put this violet flame around themselves, around their house, around their family, their children. And this is a very, on top of sending out the light, if you use the violet flame practice, those 2 practices are very beneficial on a psychosomatic, spiritual level that will help your listeners and people that are going through this process right now, because these are very, very intimidating, frightening times. I mean, we could be on the verge of World War III if we don't watch it.
This is true.
So, but nobody's gonna. I don't think the divine powers are suddenly going to fix them for us, because we created that. So we ourselves as human beings have to make that change. And when we make that change, then we're helped from above. But it doesn't work the other way around.
Right. And I mean, the thing is too, if we're constantly living in fear and anxiety, we're not able to rest properly. So therefore we can't go into a dream state. And when we get, at least for me personally, when I go into a dream state, there's times when I will get information that will lead up to things I need to know. Because I'm intuitive. And
right.
And if we're also living in fear and anxiety all the time, we're going to miss signs. We're going to miss things that are being presented to us because we're so wrapped up and distracted that we're not going to see what is right there for us. We're not going to necessarily hear the cues from our intuition because we can't focus.
Absolutely. Yeah. One thing that people need to understand is, we do, on top of having a higher power, we also have a lower power. We have a basic self that wants to keep us down, that wants to keep us, mired in materialism and being a slave to the system. So there's still a part of us, especially, well, women have better intuition than men, but still, using that intuition, that small voice. I didn't use it for many years. I've trained myself now to use it more as I'm growing older. But if I'd listened to some of the promptings that I had in my younger years, I wouldn't have made a lot of the mistakes that I did. But that's okay. It is what it is. And so, we can always change, and, we can always start our day again. So it's important now to open ourselves up. In my book, I said that the greatest lie detector that's ever been built is your intuition, and so you can bypass, like you said, today lies are being portrayed as truths, and truths are being portrayed as lies.
Well, and think about it when we go back to school for a second, and even your parents, when you know something as a child, because our intuition is very ripe then. Our intuition is, we're still very new to it. But people will tell us, "Oh, you're crazy." No, that's not right. That's wrong. They start putting all these, dare I say, these restrictions on your intuition for you to question them. I've had one of my friends is a medium, and I think she was 5. She said she was in her bed sleeping. She woke up and she saw this man at the foot of her bed who had water coming out of his mouth and everything else. And she ran out of the room, screamed, and her parents thought she was insane. Well, it turns out as she got older, she investigated this because she dared not mention it again. There was a boat wreck, a shipwreck not too far from where they lived. And several people died. So, and this goes back to when you're clearer, you can see these things. I don't necessarily, when I talk to the dead, they've come through and told me things. I don't see them, but I feel how they died. And I mean, that's the thing. Just because somebody hears something doesn't mean that they're crazy. Now, some people may have a mental problem. I'm not going to say they don't. And some people see the dead, and some people see the words that they need to see. Other people hear things, and other people sense things. That's the one thing we don't we have to put everything in a box to make everybody else comfortable. That goes with religion, sex, everything, and intuition included. But the thing is, you can't explain everything. Everything can't be just labeled and go, okay, that's it.
Yeah, and coming back to childhood, I had visions of my past life, and as do many children. They have visions of their past life, and they talk to their parents, and the parents just like, no, that's just your imagination. And so, they put down the kids, and then the kids at a younger age, they play with the nature spirits in the gardens, the gnomes and the fairies that they can see psychically. And again, that's another thing. We've lost our psychic vision. That's a faculty that's natural in us. And so at one time we actually had a third eye. But it's now the pineal gland, and so a lot of that stuff has to be reawakened in order for us to become enlightened. And and so from early age, they put I went to a restaurant the other day to have some dinner with some friends, and this has happened more than once. The parents that had their kids. The kids are just not even having dinner. They're having dinner, but they got their little faces, glued to the video or the iPhone or whatever, and playing video games all through the dinner. And so, we're indoctrinated by the TVs, by the media, by advertisers from an early age, and so eventually we're kind of become walking zombies and just easily manipulated. And again, this is something that's been going on for centuries, not only yesterday, it's been going on for centuries, molded by very powerful, highly intelligent individuals on different lower realms of existence that have kept us in control and hypnotized and have sent us to war. And I don't think there is any particular country. I believe there's forces that control these countries on a collective that are working to keep us in control. But that will change. It has to change. because not anything that's built on lies. If you look at any dictatorship throughout history, it all fell. Took time, but it all fell. Caused a lot of destruction in between, but it all falls in the end. Truth does eventually prevail, but truth or evolution, we're always evolving. We can evolve ourselves, but eventually we have to evolve back to the source that we eventually came from.
Well, the truth will set you free. One thing I want to talk about real quick is the fact that you were talking about your lower self versus your higher self. And this is, going back to the childhood entrapment of you didn't hear that. You're taught at a certain point not to trust your intuition. So therefore, what happens is you get these pings, you get these signs, you're thinking, oh, okay, I see what path I need to go on. I know what I got to do. And then your lower self kind of kicks in and goes, wait, no, don't do that. You shouldn't do that. Don't trust that. And so you're in a kerfuffle, for lack of a better way to put it, because you're not sure which is actually true. And because and one more thing. And because we are taught that if you hear things or if you think you saw something, you must be crazy. Then you start questioning your sanity.
Right, exactly. And, and then, we're susceptible to what our parents tell us over and over again. And so in the end, we believe that, and the lower self or the conscious mind doesn't like pain, doesn't like change. And so anything that's painful, it doesn't like, but in order to grow, sometimes you have to go through painful, but it opts for easy, it doesn't like confrontation. It doesn't like anything that will. And so unfortunately, the only way sometimes pain can be a hard teacher, but it's the only way to sometimes go through. But, pain is inevitable, but suffering is an option. So in order to change and make changes in our lives, sometimes we have to make that effort, which is not easy. I mean, people who go against the norm sometimes get crucified or murdered or hung through history because they don't conform to the norm. And these days we're asked to not conform to the normal, the so-called normal, and rise up and be counted and say, no, this is not right. And so, that's what we have to do. If I think we have a responsibility for the younger generations that are coming up. We have to leave some kind of legacy. How do we want to be remembered as somebody who led a selfish, self-centered life and had a nice house and money in the bank and died, or somebody who, did some kind of change in their own way for the world? And, we can't all be Mahatma Gandhi's or Mother Teresa's overnight, but we can make an individual change for the collective. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, if we trust, like I said, if we trust our intuition more and get out of our heads and that's telling us don't do this, we can make that change. Because what people are going to say is, well, you don't want to go out to a protest because you could get shot. You don't want to go here because this could happen to you. Okay, but what if I don't? What if I go there and I actually do something that's beneficial? And I've talked about this before. My husband, when we got together, he was sick. He wasn't dying, but he was sick. And he's like, I'm going to die one day. And I'm like, look, it's better to love you and lose you than not have that experience. And that's the truth. I wish he was here. But the fact of the matter is, I'm glad I went through all this because it made me who I am today. And I had a great relationship with him. But I took that risk. So sometimes you have to trust your instincts and say, okay, I'm going to do this, even if it's out of your comfort zone, as long as it doesn't harm anybody.
It may ruffle some feathers, but what are you going to do? You have you have to stand strong in your belief, know. But like I say, protest these days, there's different ways of protesting, but you have to. I think the best way of protesting is the spiritual way, and not violent protests is where you're looting and bombing and stuff like that. So, absolutely, I agree with you.
Let's talk a little bit before we wrap up about your book, The Struggle of World Sanity. And I know you've mentioned it a couple of times. Let's talk a little bit more in detail about that. What made you decide to write it?
I wrote it because it's funny. It occurred right at the beginning of COVID, so it was a good subject to talk about. It was a kind of a labor of love. I never really wanted to write a book. It just kind of fell into my lap, and a friend of mine helped format it, and we put it on Amazon, and it got some good reviews, and it's doing well. It is a struggle for world sanity. I think the whole world is going insane. It has no direction, and the main reason is to let people know that the message that we discussed tonight was the spiritual solution, and there's ways. And I go into my own spiritual journey, my own life, my experiences with my own yogi master, and the teachings that he's propounded in order for us, and the true history of the planet, of our race, where we came from, based on his meditations. And so I felt that it was important to write something like that in order for people, again, to be enlightened and realize that these are truths that have not been revealed by the general public or the media. And it's important that these truths be revealed. And so that's the reason why I did it. It's very interesting. I actually got, last year, this year I was approached by a filmmaker in North Carolina, and she read the book, and they actually want to do a documentary now on it.
Yes.
So the goal is to hopefully get it on Netflix or Amazon. And so we're working on that. Probably not going to happen this year, maybe next year, but we'll take it from there, see what happens.
Well, congratulations on that. I do. Something popped in my head before we wrap this up is, we're talking about Bible and creation stories and everything. And we were talking about race. And the funny thing when you think about it is we allegedly all came from Adam and Eve. Allegedly. We came from Adam and Eve.
Right.
So where did all the different races come from? I mean, it's like if you unpack certain things, it's just like, there's no logic to it. There's none.
Yeah, and Adam and Eve were white.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's why it's like there's no real logic to it.
No. My master said it's a fairy story, but it has a story of moral principles where, it talked about the fall in the Garden of Eden. So it talked about the fall of our civilization. But it's just a fairy story. I mean, and then people believe that, that we came from Adam and Eve.
Well, I've joked several times about how marketing is a lovely thing. And I go back to the 1970s with the pet rock. The rock in a box with some googly eyes on it. And we're going to sell it to you for $7. And it sold like hotcakes. Why? Because somebody said you needed it. And that's our media. And if you haven't seen this movie, I would recommend it, called Wag the Dog. It's from the 90s. And it talks about how the government actually perpetrates making a war film to get people to support their cause.
Well, they're doing that right now anyway in the media, but, subtly.
Yeah, but they show how they made this whole fake war up to get this done. But anyway, I digress. I thank you for coming on. It's been a very interesting conversation.
Well, I really enjoyed it, and it's good to talk to a fellow intellectual, somebody who can think for themselves, think outside the box. So I really appreciate that. And I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about, which I forgot to ask you? But
there's many things to talk about, but I think
always come back.
We got the crux of the message, the spiritual message, and if people were interested in more about the book and whatever, they can just go to my website.
Okay, that'll be in the show notes, folks. So the conversation was a little wild at times, and I think it's informative. It was definitely a conversation that was outside the box. And you really have to look at the bigger picture of the world. Sometimes things are going on behind the camera that we don't see. I mean, The Wizard of Oz, dare I say, kind of taught us that, didn't it? I mean, who was the man behind the curtain? And do we really know what's going on in the world? Even if we watch the news every day, do we really know? Because even if you take away what we see in the physical realm, what is going on in the universe? What is going on around us? What energy is out there? What connections do we have? And I know some people are like, oh, brother, but the truth is we are all connected. And so, as he was saying, if we are reincarnated to have these experiences in our life, which I think we are, then how do we fix that karma? How do we have these experiences and make it better? Why are we constantly fighting? Why can't we learn lessons about love and about humanity and find ourselves in a peaceful place? I know somebody's like, oh, well, this is utopia. You want utopia. Would it be so wrong to have utopia? You know, if we could all just experience life, if it wasn't the aspects of greed, if it wasn't the aspects of, I need everything, if we just accepted who we were and not judged others, and we knew our worth and we knew our value as a human being, not based on our religion, our sex, our skin color, but based on who we are and what we bring to the table. And while I know for some that seems really, really crazy, but think about it for a minute. Imagine us at peace. Imagine if we didn't have the homeless crisis. Imagine if we could all afford to live and communicate with each other. And granted, I know we're always going to have tension. And heck, even in a relationship, you can have an argument. But you can also get past it and recover from that. So maybe we need to start all thinking a little bit outside the box, see the world in a different light, and see if we can't make it a little bit more peaceful. And, well, if you guys want to pick up Wajid's book, it's called The Struggle of World Sanity. And, you know, we are struggling with sanity at this moment. And I know some of you guys, from what we talked about, were thinking, well, that's a little insane. But is it? I mean, if you like Star Wars, like I said, the Force all connects us together, and we are connected. So on that note, I hope you have a wonderful week. If you've missed an episode of the podcast, well, you can find them at thebetter2podcast.com. And you can also find our social media links there as well. And, well, I guess I'll catch you next time, guys. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye. The Better 2 podcast is mixed, edited, and produced by Rich Zai of Third Ear Audio Productions.